I'm thrilled to be here. I'm thrilled to come back to the conference. I mean, it's incredible to have conscious community, like-minded people who support a bigger vision of yourself. And that's what I'm all about. That's what I've been all about since I was in the third grade, and what I love about the work that I get to present is how do we take the 4 facets of what One Life is all about? Vision, planning, relationship, finance, wellness. How do we take that and look at within ourselves, where do we get stuck? Where is our thinking off track? And how do we get more authentically us and successful in that process, right? How do we set up lifetime practices and habits that help us step into a vision of ourselves that is the best vision of ourselves? And that doesn't mean perfection. It means a certain progression, I think. I think of the first One Life conference that I went to. I met people who had financial thinking that was off the charts. It was bigger than I had ever even been around. And it inspired me to think bigger, do more, earn more, help more. I think it's about receiving and giving, and that's what One Life's all about.
Yeah.
I said a lot, but
no, that's great. I was actually just echoing that same sentiment before you hopped on, and that's what I think makes One Life unique. Is not only that is it a very much holistic, centered organization and community, but it's also one where everybody is looking to help, no matter the level that they're at. And I think that's really inspiring, because you're not often around communities or people who have that mindset as well.
We're really not around that. I feel like that's all I'm around lately.
Well, I would contend that you probably did that intentionally, though, and I think that
it's not the norm.
It's not the norm, and that's what I mean.
Right, and corporate America needs to have a big wake-up call and change that mindset, and so that their employees and people feel valued. I think people want to feel valued.
Sure.
And that's what you get at One Life, no matter at what level of your success, no matter where you are in your life. There's someone there to hook arms with you and help you progress and help you grow. That is for sure.
This is already turning out to be a great interview, just because I see that making a promo video a little bit later. So thanks for the soundbite there. Lisa, give us your story and kind of catch us up, because I don't know how much we've gotten the chance to connect, because I think you presented at a conference before I got involved, and so I'm excited now to just kind of hear how you got here and why this is something that you feel so committed and dedicated to. Yeah, passionate about.
When I presented the first time, I presented a body of work that I created to help kids grow self-esteem, and it was a platform for social emotional learning development. I call it my Hearty Kid, and it's about a whole program to help families and kids and classrooms help teach kids that their words have power and how to use them powerfully. And I was on a podcast yesterday about money mindfulness, and I was giving all these teachings that I do for families and kids around money matters. And the interviewer said to me, "Oh my God, this makes so much sense for kids." And I said, that's why I start teaching it with kids, because then as adults, we can see the clarity when it comes to teaching our kids. It's harder to see with ourselves. So it's fun to come to One Life now, really with the adult mindset as my audience, right? I never stop like trying to inspire kids or help families, but I'm coming to One Life now as the work that I do on a day in and day out basis. I'm an executive therapeutic coach. So what that means is I bring all my experience as a therapist, which I've done for over 25 years, and my work as an entrepreneur and a coach, and I blend the two together in this body of work to help people grow bigger dreams, help them become more visible in their work and with their voice, become more vocal, and to really find out what matters to them, what their gifts are to share with the world, and then how to share it authentically and how to struggle. And then in that struggle, like share our vulnerability and share our courage and share how we got through to where we are today. My story, I just kind of nailed a bit of my story about how I got here. Recently, I was giving a talk, and I had a ninth grade teacher tell me that I was the worst student that she'd ever met, that I was not smart, and I would never amount to anything. And what I realized is that I took that shame and just buried it and buried it and buried it. And fortunately, I didn't bury it in addiction, which is so easy for us to bury shame in addiction. I buried it by being quiet. I buried it by hiding. And for a lot of people who know me, they would say that that doesn't seem like really how I was living my life. But the bigness and the boldness that I like to be in the world and share with people, I think that got hidden under shame. And then I made a commitment recently, like no more. And I created this whole platform about becoming visible now and helping people like step into their truth and authentically share their gifts. So that's a bit about my story.
Yeah. There's lots of themes that are coming up about throughout these talks, and one thing that I really enjoy is that there's so many amazing women on our roster this year, and it's just I think it's a great kind of turning of the tide. Tim put out this email a few months ago, basically telling guys to like watch out because like women are here and they're taking over. And I find that having examples like you is so needed, in this world. And so whether it's women or not, but I find that having people to point to and to say that, they've done that and they've been there and here's where they are now, it just gives people so much confidence and hope and all that kind of stuff. So,
and you have a young child, right?
Yes, he's a
boy.
He's just about to be one. He'll be one in a couple of weeks.
He's so lucky to have a conscious dad that honors women. I mean, that's a whole other conversation we can get into, but
sure. Well, I've been lucky to have a lot of great, strong, women around me who supported me and a lot. And so I have a lot to be grateful for. And yeah, that was a big thing is making sure that he came in with with that understanding. And, I guess for me, I was lucky enough to have a dad who similarly treated my mom, wonderfully. And I didn't know that wasn't the norm.
Yeah.
And kind of, having friends and knowing people who grew up in a totally 180 situation has made us more conscious about that. So yeah, you're absolutely right. That's been a big part of it.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what I've been challenged. And one of the things that come up is, although my parents are great people and they, loved us and taught us, gave us unconditional love and, put us in sports and, fed us and that whole thing. But one thing that they didn't give us a foundation for was personal development or professional growth. I mean, my mom, she just retired from the city of Los Angeles, and she worked there for almost 30 years. And, her mindset is totally un one life. It's very much and that's why I said the norm is not to think like you, or to think like one life, or to be able to utilize their experiences or their strengths in the ways that you're talking about. So I'm always curious at what's the introduction to this conversation, or how do you get people to wake up to going through this process, or to be willing to do these things, which to the mainstream or to the norm might be different or weird or woo woo or whatever kind of word you want to put on it.
Yeah, I think it's such a valuable question. And I'm going to go back to the kids program that I developed. And I developed that because there was a little kindergarten girl who was afraid to raise her hand and afraid to be brave. And all of a sudden I thought, well, she's got to practice being brave, because she can't go through kindergarten not raising her hand. And so that inspired this whole program, which then inspired my thinking around, oh, we need to have this as a part of our conversation from the word go. Any kind of social emotional learning, or as you call personal development, or, I'm with teenage girls now. Now my girls are teens, and I'm with them and their friends. And now they'll be in the back seat, and if they put themselves down, the other ones will say, oh, no, 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 not on Lisa's watch. Can you talk about yourself like that? And I love it. That's the reputation I have as a mom. And it's also what my girls do with them. Why? Because they've been around it. So the way, like as an example, I'll give you a very funny example. We were in the airport, and my daughter had her cell phone kind of on the edge of her suitcase, like a little too edgy for my comfort. I said, that's a $700 computer basically on the edge of a 36-inch drop. And she said, well, Mom, how are you going to get through it if it breaks? How are you going to land? How are you going to get grounded again? Because we can get through it. I mean, that was a beautiful moment, because she's obviously heard me, and she's heard my teaching about cultivating a different relationship with anxiety. Like, it isn't about, what are we going to do? It's, how are we going to get through it, right? And so I think we have to have more conversations like this, more conferences like One Life, so we start to plant the seeds in families and individuals around this conversation that is now the norm to you and me, right? It's when it's not the norm, we have to introduce it as not only practices for people, but practical outcomes. Like, we teach them the why of it. Why are we doing this? Why is this important to do? And I have so far to grow and learn, but what I've got going really well. And then I keep going to conferences. I'm coming to One Life, not only to present, but to learn from people who know so much more than I do in like the facet of finance. I love learning from One Lifers about that.
What's interesting and maybe fitting for this this conversation is that this is not the first, but we're reintroducing the Next Gen Summit, and it's our kind of way of introducing kids to these topics and allowing them to where the first time that they're exposed to these ideas is not when they're 18 or 20 or getting out of college. I was I guess lucky enough to stumble into it when I was 17 or 18, but I can only imagine where I could have been and where I what things might have looked like had I been implementing those things from a younger age. And so I'm curious about two things. The first is like what's the value of creating those beliefs around a child, and then is there any, for people who are at home, is there any tactics or any strategies that people can use to kind of leverage their own growth to improve their families, their kids?
Yes, I think one core teaching that I always give families is this: the more that we have rituals within our families, the more foundational it is for our kids. Now, we have a ritual every Friday night of appreciations where we go around the table and we say one thing to one another, something that the other person did during the week that we appreciated, something that they did or a way of being, right? Now, there are days when my kids, or there are weeks, because we just do it on Friday night, but there are weeks when my kids are like, oh, I don't want to do appreciations. Why? Because they're teenagers. Like, that's okay. But that doesn't matter. We still do appreciations. Why? Because it's a part of the framework of our family. Hold on, I just want to grab my plug because I just noticed my battery is low. And the ritual is there for that exact moment when you don't feel like it. You go outside of yourself and you make a deposit into the family unit because it's good for the family unit, not because we feel like it or don't feel like it. So I think we start with rituals. And I know, the whole Miracle Morning, that's all ritualistically based, and it is a fabulous program. I think we also, when we recognize the pain points of our own childhoods and find a way to correct that in raising our own kids. So we don't dump that stuff on our kids, or we don't blame or shame our kids about those parts of ourselves that are maybe less than fulfilled or satisfied. But we recognize it in our own work with therapists or coaches or personal development programs or conferences like One Life. And when we have that awareness, we ultimately parent differently. We provide a corrective experience for our kids. Another great thing for kids, especially little kids coming, into this work, are visual anchors. I call these, little signs that you make or sayings that you make. Put them up on the wall, put them on the mirrors in the bathroom. Those kinds of reminders for kids and for us. All of the stuff we're doing for kids is really for us too. That makes a big impact because they see it, know it, and begin to believe it, whether they want to or not, right? It's in front of them. I have so many wonderful tips, especially through the Hearty Kid program, that I'm willing to share at the conference and beyond the conference. But those are just some beginnings.
You guys got to come to the conference for all the goodies. What you're kind of talking about is this positive engineer, engineering is maybe the wrong word. Conditioning is maybe even a loaded word as well.
Let's engineer it.
Yeah, because, my wife and I are planning on homeschooling, and one reason is that we want to be able to kind of have a little more control over the curriculum. But another reason is just that kids are mean, and I know that for me, not having the emotional tools to deal with what in that moment seems so real, to us, where it's just like, for adults, we kind of look back at it and we think, oh, it's, just kids teasing people. But I remember for me, those moments were very real. And I think that's another reason that we want to be able to give them those tools and allow them to
Can I
to
can I
develop them. Yeah, go ahead.
can I make a suggestion in
Yeah.
that? So kids can be mean. Kids can also be fabulously loving and generous and kind, right? But um, what I learned, and this was a big aha for me this last year when my youngest daughter was in 7th grade, and she started to get bullied. And it was kind of a group effort. There were a bunch of kids. And I felt like it stemmed from jealousy, but it didn't matter. What was valuable about it for me was that she and I got to navigate this really hard life lesson together. And we got to navigate it in the way like that I wanted to go to the principal and she wanted to be on the down low about it. Like it would have brought on too much shame and embarrassment had I called these kids out or something. And so what it allowed us to do was, like with the cell phone and the what are we going to do if it falls and breaks, it was like, how are you going to keep landing in your truth and finding your voice and dealing with the hurt that you're dealing with, right? It's like we were in this conversation on a nightly basis. And then there were 2 other girls that were getting bullied too. And so it was interesting to watch them navigate the conversation and help usher them out of it so they didn't just stay in that middle school milieu. So my point is, we can't avoid mean people. We've got to grow an ability to navigate those pain points, right? We can protect our kids only so much, right?
Right. Yeah. And I think that, I guess our reasoning is that we want to be able to build those lessons in and be very much, as you have a part of those learnings and challenges, as opposed to just being forced to deal with it on your own, which I think is what happens most of the time, or at least what I've seen a lot. So let's talk about, you mentioned how some of these things are applicable to kids and adults, and this year you're going to be focusing more on framing it for someone who's an adult. How are they similar, and can has your work with kids actually impacted and shaped your ideas on how to be successful as an adult, or impacted, I'd imagine, your parenting?
I think it was vice versa because I've been working with adults for over 20 years, and then I had kids just 15 years ago. And so I think my work with adults informed my parenting so much. It's the greatest gift that I have. Now, my kids wouldn't say that. They do a very funny stand-up comedy routine of like what it's like having 2 therapists / healers as parents. It's like, you no longer just get a stomach ache. You don't get to just have a stomach ache. It's always like, what are you feeling, or what's going on emotionally? But my work with adults really takes into account the historical piece of what happened to us as kids, right? This body of work that I've created called Executive Therapeutic Coaching, it's about the understanding of our historical selves, right? Where these stories came from, where this unconscious material got embedded early on. And then I help people envision what they want moving forward and how they want to grow, and then strategizing around implementing it and bringing it to action. That's what I love about One Life, is it's the same thing with the 4 different areas of focus. And I do that also with my clients, but I really help them look at their historical stories and then the stories that they make up about it, or where the bully kind of has gotten in the way, and then what to do about it. So traditional therapy is wonderful, but I'm working with people who are highly motivated and highly committed to get out of that gunk and to take the next steps toward a successful future. You know, what do they envision? What's their vision planning?
Yeah. It's beautiful how all of the, all these things weave together, and, what's kind of emerged out of this week is that there are these four pillars, and then there's this foundation that's underneath it. And, what you're speaking to is what a lot of our presenters have spoke to, is that foundation is first, naturally, and that foundation is impacts and affects all of the other pillars, and all of the other core areas as well. So that's
I just met with a couple who they're getting married, and they're planning a beautiful fancy wedding with a wedding planner. Like, people shouldn't hire a wedding planner. People should hire a relationship planner. That's where the money should go, not to the wedding day. And I work with a lot of couples too for that same thing. Like, how do you start and build a solid foundation? I love the siren.
Yeah, sorry for that. We live right by a hospital, which is great in some ways, and then you get that. Lisa, where as we wrap up and get out of here, obviously you can come hang out with us and all the presenters that have been on the summit in October. And where can they catch up with you or get connected with you if they want to before October comes around?
So I can give you my website.
Yeah, website's great. Website.
Yeah, lisapeppersatkin.com. And reach out and I'm happy to do discovery calls with people. Discovery calls for you, not a so many people do discovery calls to sell coaching packages, not that. A discovery call about what you want to work on, and then tap into my knowledge and my connections with people, and I can guide you toward, hey, maybe these would be the next best steps. So feel free to email me. That's lisa@lisapeppersatkin.com. And let me know how I can serve you and help you. That's what juices me the most.
Thank you for your time and your willingness to support the One Life community. It's been an amazing finish to today's conversations. We've got a few more tomorrow, and then you guys can definitely. I don't think that these interviews necessarily do justice in terms of what can happen when you immerse yourself around a group of people like this for a weekend or longer. So Lisa, thanks for contributing to that.
Totally. And I'm available to help in any way I can.
Well, thank you so much, guys. You guys can still register. The tickets prices go up August 14th. So you got a couple of days before that. Go to onelifefullylive.org/conference and you can get signed up and bring the kids as well. Lisa, thanks so much. Guys, we're signing off today. We'll see you back tomorrow.
Bye.